All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jacob Terry. I'm with CxAlloy, and the session today is titled More Commissioning, Less Wasted Time, Trends in Software Integration and Automation. And I'm not sure, course number, you'll probably have to talk to them after the fact here, but go through some of this beginning stuff. I'll tell you, I normally like presenting. I think I'm a little out of practice after a couple of years, so I'm a little nervous here, but hopefully I'll do a good job. I like to walk around a little bit. I hope that doesn't bother folks too much. So a couple of things, or intro on what the description is. You can read it here, but essentially I want to go through my view about where the market is going in terms of software applications to do with commissioning and to do with the construction industry in general. You know, I was talking to someone earlier, and one of the things that I like doing these presentations, I like the opportunity that CX Energy offers for us as vendors to do these. But I spend my days overseeing product development on a software basis, right? I'm not doing commissioning work. I'm talking to commissioning folks a lot of the time, but I can't provide greater insight into how commissioning should happen than all of you guys out here, all of you folks out here that are experts on it, right? So I tend to talk about things I do know more about, which is kind of the software side of it, right? And how it intersects with the commissioning. So you know, that kind of leads into why I'm presenting about what I'm presenting, because it's an area where I feel like I have some information that maybe you all aren't aware of that could be valuable to share. So a couple of things that I hope that you all get out of this today is, one, to just sort of talk about the increasing need, or you might disagree whether it's a need or not, but the increasing usage and demand for software in the construction industry and the commissioning industry. I want to talk about a couple of specific examples of that, talk about the automated functional testing, which I know has been, there was a session from Derek McGarry earlier today on that, and I'll touch on it a little bit. If you attended that one, I hope not to be overly repeating some of the stuff that he covered. I'm going to talk about data center commissioning. I think is a great example of where the drive and demand for commissioning software and software solutions in general is coming from, and some of the reasons for that. And then just kind of in general, I also want to talk about where I see this going over time, and how do we deal with this proliferation of software tools and software products, and kind of how do you, as you'll see in a later slide, how do you manage the pain that these tools sometimes can inflict. So let me start with this. How much of your day on a given day is spent hitting Control or Windows, right? Windows C, Windows V, right? Copy and paste, copy paste. If you're a Mac person, maybe it's Command Control, Command C, Command V. I'm a Mac person, so that's what I'm familiar with. But you probably are experiencing this, have in the past, and probably a little bit more now than in the past, where there's a lot of time that you're having to spend, or being asked to spend, or being asked to have other people that work for you spend, taking information from one source, one system, one application perhaps, and bring it into another system, right? And it seems like it's maybe getting worse than it was before if you're dealing with that, right? There's this explosion of not only the actual variety of products available in the construction software space, but also in the usage. So there's some that have been around for a long time that are just getting more and more used, more and more implemented, and then of course there's a variety of new products as well, new software solutions that weren't there in the past, right? One of my proposed titles for this session was this, I want to be free of this pain. I don't know, not everyone's a fan of the newer movies, but I really liked Force Awakens, where they introduced Kylo Ren's character, and this was a great scene in my view. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, this is the scene that came to mind, right? And I feel like maybe some of you feel this sometimes, which is I don't want another login. I don't want to learn another system. I don't want to watch the training videos for another one. I don't want to have to copy and paste my content into, the second or third or fourth system. Right, I want to be free of this pain. Hopefully you don't have to kill your father to solve this one. So why is this happening? Why do we have this explosion in software? Well, there's a couple of drivers here, in my view. One of them is that construction itself is growing, right? And this is probably true worldwide. I focused on the United States, where we are seeing, every month new record highs are being hit in terms of the total construction spend that is happening on a month-over-month basis. And the other one is that there's a lot of investment into these software products that's happening, right? So venture capital firms and other investors in startups and new companies and in new products are putting a lot of money into the development of these tools and the marketing and sales of them as well. And you see this in a couple of the events over the last several years. PlanGrid was acquired for 8 times their annual revenue by AutoCAD. That's a pretty big multiplier some years back. Just recently, in the last few months, I believe, Procore, which has been seeing a lot of growth recently, had an IPO. And although they've come down since, when they did have the IPO, it was one that went up above the initial list price there. And they've seen tremendous growth leading into that IPO. And then Autodesk has been working for the last several years on kind of a significant investment in retooling that they've done of their software tools and their cloud software products and some of the things in the commissioning space with what they branded as Construction Cloud, and that they're continuing to put a lot of money and energy behind. So to go back to some more specifics on those points, right? So this is from the Department of, one of the government departments. There's a lot of them, right? I can't remember which one specifically. But this is the US numbers about construction spending month by month. $1.68 trillion in January 2022, which again has been new highs every month that we had. And you can see there was some impact from the pandemic, but a lot less than I expected, at least in March and April of 2020, in terms of long-term impact there. And it didn't take long for us to get back to those highs and now have eclipsed them. And this is from 2018, so it's not quite as indicative of, it's not fully up to date, but I think it is relatively accurate to what we're seeing in terms of the investment that's being made by, this is focused on venture capital firms, but also you see a lot of investment happening internally at existing companies. Either companies like Autodesk that are software companies that are, making significant investments into their software tools and ones that are in the area of commissioning. And then also there can be stuff that's harder to see, but it's happening where you have firms that have not previously been building software, but have decided to build software as a part of solving their, the problems that they're seeing and the needs they have, within the construction space and within the commissioning space. That doesn't really answer why though, right? Because why are the VC firms investing? Why is that even happening in the first place, right? Well, it's because the software is actually helpful. It is effective. It is useful. It does allow you to do more with the same labor than you could before, right? It does enable new scenarios and new applications that weren't possible before, right? That's why the investment's happening, is because it delivers actual value, and that value is real, can be sold. That's why people are choosing to buy in it, right? It's a whole flywheel here going on. And so ultimately the driver is that these software products are useful, they are delivering value, and they are enabling new scenarios that wouldn't be possible without them. So let's talk about some of the specifics here that I'm talking about. Or, software processes allow clients to use, to capture more of the value of the work that they're being done, right? Now this is true, these first two are true of basically any software product. It's going to do one of these first two things almost always, right? Which is it's going to either allow you to get more value out of what you're already doing, or it's going to allow you to do less, increase your efficiency, less effort for the same result or greater result. Those two are true kind of regardless of what kind of software you're talking about, at least if that software is going to sell, right? I'm sure there's software out there that makes you less efficient. That's not going to last in the market very long. The last two are more specific to web-based software, which is where the whole industry has been going for a long time, and continues to be kind of the de facto way nowadays to have a product. Is that it's a web-based, it's an internet connected application where the data can be shared. And when you have those scenarios, you get some additional benefits, right? Where having a shared data source reduces or eliminates a lot of the sources of that create administrative work, right? It reduces, in one way, it reduces the copy and paste and the manual file management and some of these tasks that normally need to be done. Also, having a shared platform available over the internet means that you can distribute the work more broadly among the team members. This is particularly applicable in the construction industry, which has large teams working on these projects together. And so if you can have more of the work distributed among all the participants and team members, that's going to be valuable at least for the folks that are having the work distributed away from them, right? And this is often the case when we're talking about commissioning software, right? One of the goals, in my perspective at least, over CxAlloy, is one of the goals of the product is to make it so that tasks that rightfully belong to the contractor can be completed 100%, all the way to the end, done by the contractor without the commissioning authority needing to get re-involved in any way outside of maybe reviewing and approving that work or something of that nature, or maybe not even that, depending on what your processes are. So online platforms allow the work to be distributed out among the team members, and ideally closest to the people that are ultimately responsible for whatever those tasks are. So I want to go from those sort of high-level benefits and talk about a couple of scenarios specifically where we see some of this value coming to the fore, and where therefore it is driving a lot of the demand for it. So one is data center commissioning, and I don't know about your all experience, but from the vendor side, I spend I would say disproportionate amount of my time helping or presenting to or training folks that are involved in data center projects, because although the number of projects, and when I say disproportionate, the number of data center projects compared to other projects is small. I don't know, I didn't come up with the percentages, I didn't do analysis, I should have, but it's probably less than 10% of the projects in our system are data center projects. But the nature of those projects tends to be very large, very demanding, very rigorous, and so they have a lot more individuals involved, they have a lot more data running through the system, there's a lot more demand for functionality and feature improvements and so forth. And so they're a driver of the usage of these platforms, and certainly of CxAlloy. Right, as I mentioned here, you have these exacting clients. You got the owner clients, whether it's a lot of these are being built by these big firms, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and they are heavily involved in how that project's going to run. I think a big driver is the profit incentive that they have, where it's very important to them that these data centers get built. That's not always the case, I feel like, from what I've seen with some of the projects, is not that no one cares, but there's not this financially incentivized level of interest in rapid completion like what you see with the data center projects. Because of that, there's large teams, there's very demanding schedules, very fast turnaround. They're trying to complete them piecemeal sometimes, right, so that they can start leverage a component of it as soon as possible, right? That then leads to these more formalized processes so that they can try to get essentially more throughput in the building of them. right? Because you have these large teams, it also means, and also data centers have a particular scenario where location-wise, they tend to be remote. That limits some of your hiring capabilities. I mean, yes, you can ship people in, but ultimately it does make it more challenging to build out these large teams. That can lead to a greater variance in sort of the skill sets and capabilities of the folks on the team, right? And in particular, their level of comfort working with software and technology. And like I was mentioning, there's quite a bit more content just on average that we see on data center projects. So I did a little research into our platform and what the projects that we have and did some averages. And so what I found is that data center projects have, this is somewhere in the 4 to 5x multiplier of number of equipment on average that they have compared to other types of projects that tend to happen or that we track, you know, hospital and office buildings and so forth in university types of projects that we have in our system. That leads to not only is there more equipment, but there's also quite a bit more tracking of individual data points about that equipment that happen on the data center projects compared to other projects is what we see as well. So not only is there more equipment overall, there's more actual points of data being tracked about each of those pieces of equipment. And then finally, and this sort of ties in at least with how our system works, that there's more checklists, right? So there's more associated data, not only in these data points, attributes as I've labeled them here, but there's more checklists associated with this equipment as well. So it's all these sort of multiple factor increases when you come into these types of projects over kind of your standard average project. And you know, I would say that in my view, from what I see, I don't know that you could really effectively run a data center project, certainly not on the schedules that they maintain, without a software answer. If you're trying to run these, certainly, I mean, pen and paper are totally out, right? But even through Excel and Word type of approaches, which is often where you know, small commissioning firms start out, and when they're doing small projects, they may not invest in any software tool at all. That's fine, they're using Excel and Word. You get to these types of projects, there's no way that you're going to be able to accomplish it with a level of quality you want and on the schedule that is being asked for without having a tool, and probably, frankly, a specialized tool aimed at, you know, addressing the particular concerns and use cases or concerns and challenges of a project of this nature. I want to point out that I got some of the insights here from a webinar that Greg Achilles with Hood, Patterson, and Dewar did with us some time ago. And he had some interesting points about kind of what the value of the software is in these types of high pressure, large scale projects. And one of the things he talked about was that, in his view, some of the most important aspects of managing a project of this nature is the communication, coordination, and direction, all of which are greatly facilitated by software solutions, and in particular online software solutions like I talked about earlier, right? Communication and the coordination are greatly enhanced by people working off of a shared data set together. And then he also talked about how one of the things that can happen is you've got your whole schedule, and as he put it, there's a quote here, right, is that the major problem with those, and of course they're very important, but a problem that comes up with them is that they're far more assumptive than prescriptive, right? In other words, the truth on the ground changes, right, as the project goes on. And the point that he made was the team members need a way, this is again his terminology here, they need a way to re-engage with reality, right? When things get off scale from what that schedule and plan is, and you need to change your tactics to address what's actually happened, you need an effective mechanism for everyone to understand what the actual situation on the project is, so that you can then tailor your new tactics and your new plan around that reality. That is very difficult to do if you don't have some sort of, you know, centralized view into the progress and situation with your project, right? And he also noted that, in order to make the informed decisions that are necessary in these types of projects, not only for him, but for everyone up and down the chain, right, you need to be having the right information to do that, but what that information is going to change from person to person. So again, you need an approach that allows each person to have access to all of the information that they may need, and then to be able to tailor that information specific to what their concerns are. I mean, this is as simple as something like, just show me the things assigned to me, right, as a concept, up to much larger things or deeper analytics, I would say, about system by system, where do we stand relative to where we plan to be, what's our differential from what that is, and then using that information to devise a tactic about how we're going to move forward and prioritize the work going forward, right? So again, a project of this nature, and there's other similar ones. I think there's not much that compares in my experience. Maybe stadiums, they tend to have complexity and deadlines that is pretty important that they get met. But there's not too much that meets sort of the criteria that we see in data center. In particular, the very invested owners that are pushing really hard because of that financial incentive. You know what? I will say, actually, another similarity I've seen is we're involved in some electrical vehicle manufacturing projects, and they have a very similar feel to those, right? Very demanding, very strict schedules. No way that what they're trying to achieve could be done without dedicated software solutions to work through all the challenges that it introduces. Okay, so another area where there's a lot of activity and I think has a lot of value over time is, and again, a software solution driving the demand because it delivers real value, is automated testing, right? Automated functional testing. And again, there was a presentation earlier today by Derek McGarry of Otto about that. And there's other tools out there as well, right? And basically they offer this ability to take the functional testing and do it through software without having to have an individual involved actually running the test at the time that it runs. And the idea is that this delivers values in a number of ways, right? One is you can do 100% testing instead of sample-based testing at a similar cost to what you would do the sample-based testing, right? The test can be run and rerun multiple times without incident, right? And potentially with no additional cost, right? It's already in the system, it's already ready to run, it's just hitting the enter key to run it again, essentially. The tests it's more possible to tailor the test to the specific scenarios that you're interested in, right? So as an example, if you want to have a test that really to do it right would take 8 hours, that might not be something that you're willing to invest in on a personnel level and having someone sit there for 8 hours as that test executes all the way through. As an automated test, that's something that you could do and not really be too concerned about. And ideally, the concept here is to shift the time spent by the commissioning authorities away from the test execution, which, as automated testing, I think, effectively demonstrates, can be done by a computer, to troubleshooting and problem solving exclusively, right? To make their time more valuable that they're spending. So those are just two scenarios. There's others that I could go into in terms of any number of things, like remote verification of work completion, which these tools make possible, right? I don't want to have to go out to the site to verify the issue's closed. Why don't you just take a photo of it, attach it, I get notified, I'll verify it. All sorts of scenarios. I'm sure, hopefully you all have been involved with projects and experienced some of these benefits that come from these software solutions. And yet, the flip side of this is, well, now I've got 19 different systems. It's great that we have these examples, and automated tracking is great, and this commissioning online platform is great, and this project management is great, and this fault detection thing is great. But those are like 17 different logins that I have. I guess I listed just 4 there, but 4 is a lot, right? And there might be 6 others that you have. So it feels like, yeah, I'm doing things I maybe couldn't do before. On the other hand, though, you've introduced this whole new problem I didn't have before, right? And so some of the issues that come up there are, one, right, the inefficiencies, which is sort of the copy and paste problem, when the same information needs to be represented in different systems, right? The other issue with that is, even if you somehow could, snap your fingers, and when you sat down at the computer to copy and paste, it would all just happen instantly. There can be differences in the actual information architecture that each of these applications implement, right? They're all proprietary. There's not a standard approach. There's some sort of common practices, but there's not an official formal standard that these software products follow in how they arrange their data. And if there was, someone would do something different and talk about how much better it was in the standard, right? There's no, there's not going to be a standard. There's different setups, right? So it means things like, as an example, in our system, we have a field called discipline, right? Well, some other system might not have a discipline field, but they might have an issue type field, and we don't have an issue type field, right? Or an application may have, comments for equipment, and then the one you're moving into doesn't have comments for equipment. And so you spend time not just copying and pasting, but also working out how you're going to sort of mitigate these differences even as you move the data around manually. And then, as I was just mentioning, is the user adoption problem is there too. Certainly you probably feel this yourselves internally, but you may be more motivated than the next person down in terms of in the team who's even less motivated to deal with having 6 logins, right? So you might encounter this when you go out to do the kickoff meeting and you're introducing to them your online commissioning platform, and they're going, so you're telling me there's another login that I have to use, right? So you have this user adoption problem that can come into play here. So I'm going to backtrack in a minute, but let me just get to the title of this slide, Integrations and APIs. So this is one route to the solution. So the bad news is, I don't think this is going to stop in terms of software development. There's going to be more and more software. The market is bigger. I know from our own experience, I think you can go to the exhibit booth and see this in reality, is that there is value in these. There's interest in these. They are going to keep growing. They are delivering value. This problem is going to keep existing, right? And there's really only 2 long-term solutions that can really alleviate it. One is consolidation, which I'm not really going to talk about, but Autodesk could come in and buy every single product there in the exhibit hall and put it all into one platform, and hopefully that would work out well, right, in terms of the user experience. I don't know that it would, but right. So there's consolidation is an answer. But the other answer is that you can have integrations and APIs. And so let me talk a little bit about what that would look like, how that would answer some of these challenges. So one, if you have an integration, the idea is that the 2 systems are going to talk to each other, and it's going to be a mediated conversation, right, where there's been thought and effort into having that conversation happen between those 2 products. So there, what you're hoping for on this first problem is the information is still going to be represented in both systems, but they're talking to each other, and it's happening automatically, right? It's happening through just more software, right? This problem, like I was saying, this problem's never going to stop, right? It's just more software is the answer, right? And so the ability for them to talk to each other, and then to the second point is, this actual talking to each other is going to be implemented by the developers of these respective systems, professional developers that have skill and experience, understanding how to deal with the different information architectures, and can make good, smart choices about how best to translate them across. And so you're not having to face that challenge and decide how you're going to, make the fact that this has comments and this doesn't, work together. So you're going to leave that to the developers to come up with the solutions for that, and then to automate the actual application of it into those 2 platforms. And then on the user adoption side, ideally, as I'll get to in a minute, the answer here is that you now are giving the users more choice, and they don't have to log into every program. So maybe you set them up with the 6 logins or the 10 logins, but if they never log into 7 of those, that's fine. Because the information that they're using in whatever their tool of choice is getting handled automatically by these integrations and moving into the other products for everyone else to see, right? This is something that I have felt was coming for a while. I was doing some research before this presentation, and I did a presentation back in 2018 at BCA, I believe it was. And I had a slide there, and you know, I had a slide that was kind of what I thought was coming down the pipe, and I said APIs, right? I thought automatic data transfer through APIs was something that I felt like was going to see a lot of traction and growth. And I really see that coming to fruition now. So there's a couple indicators. One, from the area I know best, is the CxAlloy product that I oversee, right? And so we added a Procore integration last year. I know some of the other products out here are also integrated with Procore recently, right? We have an API I've had for a little while, but we're expanding it and we're adding it. It's been a read-only, and now we're adding the ability to actually update the information in our system through our API, right? And we've also made the choice internally to have a dedicated team that's solely responsible for API and integrations, because we see this being something that is really important for the long term. And you see similar patterns, at least from the outside, in some of these other products, right? So Procore, one of the sort of pitches that they had as they went out to IPO and as they go to market and, you know, to acquire customers, is that they've got this a fantastic API and this robust app marketplace where you can get the data in Procore out to all these other products, and you can get the data in these other products into Procore, right? That's one of their kind of key value propositions that they're offering. And Autodesk has been in the same vein. I was going to say something like following behind, but you know, they might take issue with that. Maybe they're leading, but regardless, same pattern you see with Autodesk, right? Which is that in their new Autodesk Construction Cloud, they are putting a lot of time and effort into their API. I know from just as a developer, just from interacting with the documentation for their API as compared to their old API, definitely seems like a lot more love and care is going into this new one than what they had before, right? So that it's clearly something of interest, not only to us, you know, we're a small player, but to the big players too, and they see the way that this is likely to go, right? And this is just an example screenshot here of what I already mentioned a moment ago, right? Is the idea here, and this is a demonstration through Auto, where, you know, you're going to have information that gets created or exists in one system, and then through an integration gets automatically brought into the other system, and potentially a two-way sync, depending. I mean, there's lots of different ways to set it up. But again, the point is that you as an end user don't need to be interacting with every single different application that may be getting used on the project, right? So ultimately, the vision here is, one, sometimes this is called the best of breed approach, right? Which is to, instead of, it's sort of the alternative, as I was mentioning, to consolidation. So instead of having the monolithic does everything application, and the problem with that can be that it does each of those things not great, right? Just kind of mediocre. So the alternative is this idea, this integrations-based best of breed approach, where for each specific use case and application or need, you pick the best application to address that particular need. And then you use the integration points to combine them together, right? Allow everyone that's involved with the system to use the tool that they prefer. I mean, now obviously this is still within the bounds of what the project overall chooses to use. But as an example, the vision here is that GC wants to use Autodesk or Procore, right? And then the commissioning authority wants to use CxAlloy or one of the other products. And they say, that's fine. Each one use what you want. The folks that are using the GC's folks will continue to log into their project management platform, and they're going to see the information that's happening in the other platform because there's an integration here, and interact with it without having to log in over there. They're logging in on the tool they like, they're familiar with, they're comfortable with, but the work that they're doing is represented in the other system as well, and vice versa, right? And so they can live where they like to live, but each party can live where they like to live, right? The other thing is to be able to leverage the same or the same sort of overall pot of data that may exist across multiple different systems into different levels of reports, right? So that if you're someone that is really needing the daily nitty-gritty about the exact set of questions that were answered across the 18 checklists that were completed yesterday, you can go in and see that. But then if you have someone else that wants to just see how is commissioning overall, how's our commissioning progress overall as one component of the entire project that I'm concerned about, right, which is multiple levels removed, right? It's not only do I want to know a summary of checklist progress, I want to know a summary of commissioning progress, and checklist is just a component of that, and I actually want to know a summary of commissioning progress in the context of all these other concerns that I might have about the project, about schedule or finances and so forth. And to be able to make that possible where ultimately it's the same underlying data that's feeding into those different reports, but there's different levels that are achievable of that reporting. And then ultimately, the thinking here is to avoid sort of the lowest common denominator solutions that can happen when there's sort of an over-consolidation or generalization of a tool, right? We want to be able to have these tailored tools that are built exactly for the needs of a particular industry like commissioning, and particular needs like commissioning, which has some unique needs that you're going to find don't come up, even in something closely related like QA/QC that the GC does. There's some differences there in how they execute and what the needs are. And so you want to be able to have a tool that's going to address exactly your pain points in the work that you try to do, right? And also potentially in the industry, right? If you're doing oil and gas, right? There's, I was talking to someone earlier today. One of the things that's different about certain industrial processes is there's a much higher safety concern and component of that work. I was talking to someone that works with sort of chemical facilities, right? And there's all these things around safety because they're very dangerous chemicals that come into play that don't come into play when you're building an office building, right? So they may still be doing a commissioning process, but there's another layer or another important factor there because of the particular industry. So you want to have solutions that can be tailored to not only the particular work you're doing, like commissioning, but then also the particular nuances of the vertical or industry that you're actually executing that work in, or maybe the combination of the two together, and be able to get those benefits, but not lose the benefits of having sort of a shared platform with these other areas of software and these other tools that are out there being used on the same project. So that's the vision. I definitely see it happening. I still think we're in, mile 5 of the marathon of this, right? So I think there's quite a ways to go, but I know from my own experience, I've seen some actual in-use, real-world situations where this is happening and happening successfully, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I know certainly CxAlloy that I'm over, it's going to happen, but I think we're going to see it industry-wide, and hopefully, hopefully in time, the number of logins that you all are going to need is going to stop going up and plateau for a bit, and then hopefully even go down a little bit. So that's the vision, and that is my presentation. So I appreciate your time. If anyone's interested in contacting me, there's my contact info right there. And I think we'd open it up to questions at this point.
Can you just raise your hand if you have questions? I can bring you the mic.
Someone's there, got a question.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read it.
Yeah, that's fine. I can repeat it too if anyone needs.
Out of curiosity, would there be like an additional charge when these APIs come out? Like, what is that?
So the question is, is there additional charge for APIs? It really depends. Obviously, it's a choice that each vendor makes. I think in general, you see that they're not charged for. So for example, the Procore API, I don't believe they charge an additional one for that. We don't charge an additional one for our API. I don't know offhand about Autodesk, whether that's an add-on or not. So it depends. Generally speaking, in my experience, generally, APIs are not an add-on. Not that there's not value in them, but I think it's hard to, API is two different systems talking. And so if, one of the challenges of doing API work and doing these integrations is that on the developer side, software developer side, is you have to work with a system that you no longer control, right? So as someone that has spent a long time building up our application and software product, it's sort of a shift to go from something that if it's not working or not doing what you want, you go, well, it's all ours. We'll just change it. We'll just fix it. We'll make it work the way we want. You can't do that. And so I think if they charge for them, it tends to create another layer of coordination necessary to get it to happen, because not only do the APIs need to be able to talk to each other and everything, but you need to know on a customer by customer basis whether they're paying for it or not. So it doesn't mean that they're not sometimes an upcharge, but I think that's less common compared to making them just included with paying for the software overall and having a login or having an account in general.
So I'll wing it.
Yeah, I don't think that mic wasn't working a moment ago, so.
So that just wasn't turning it on correctly. There.
Thank you. Hello?
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Do you think that commissioning software will displace people in the end?
Huh. That's a very interesting question. You know what? I'm gonna get a little philosophical here. So, one of the things I found very interesting, I did an MBA some years back, and one of the things I found was very interesting was that, say a software product like ours, or any online commissioning software, one of the things that it may potentially be interested in, just from sort of a cold business analytics view, is the concept of commoditizing its complements, right? So what is the complement to commissioning software? It's commissioning. So one of the things that we potentially could be interested in as a commissioning provider is commoditizing the commissioning process, right? Which I've been going to these meetings for a year. I know none of you all want, and I don't want it either. But the way that would work is a direction that we could take our product, and we're not doing this, but you could take it where you say, we've created the greatest library of templates and procedures and so forth, and now anyone can be a commissioning agent, right? Sign up for our product and use our library, and all you 1, 2, 3, bam, 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 you're a commissioning agent. All you got to do is follow these best practices that we've already put in place, and you're good to go, right? That's not something that I've ever been interested in. I don't think we'd be successful if we did that, because the nature of our product is we are in close partnership with the commissioning firm themselves. They're relying on us to do their work. And our mission statement that we've relied on for many years is that we do not look, personally, this is speaking from my own, we do not want to not only replace commissioning authorities, we don't even want to replace their process. We just want to allow them to take their existing process and implement it more efficiently, right? That's always been our interest, personally. Now, could someone come into the market and go for that angle I was just talking about and go, guess what? Anyone can be a commissioning agent, and we provide you all the tools to do it, and come pay $100 a month and get all this set of tools, and you're good to go, and we're going to just flood the market with commissioning firms or commissioning authorities and so forth. I think I could try. I think you know as well as I do, it's not going to work, right? Because there's so much that might work at a variety of low-cost things, but like this data center stuff, there's no way. The problems, it's so complex. The problems that you all are actually, solving. And the software is just helping you kind of manage the workload of identifying them and documenting the resolutions, but it's not providing any of the resolutions, and that's where all the value is. That's where all the value that the commissioning authorities deliver. So anyway, the answer is no. I don't think they're ever going to replace the people. I mean, the only thing that ideally all the software does is replace all the drudgery, and then you can spend your time like, oh, this is an authority problem. How are we going to solve it, right? Versus let me click 3 times in a row, 100 times in a row, type of stuff that happens sometimes. So I don't think there's any risk of that, because ultimately the end result of the work that you all are doing is stuff that I don't believe can be automated. But anyway, a couple of thoughts around that. Question over here.
Tim Bronner, Sauce O'Brien. If we have hundreds of pieces of equipment or even thousands of pieces, how do the different software products allow further entry into the programs? Is it done manually, or can it be done with Excel files?
Yeah, so our product has an import. I think any of these products, I don't know 100%. I'm not, of course, familiar with every product out there. But I imagine they all have imports. I mean, that's like when I talk about our product, like step one on any project setup generally is bringing in the list of equipment, because it's going to be so crucial to all the other things you're going to do, right? You're going to create checklists tied to that and tests tied to that, and all your issues, or vast majority of your issues, are going to link back to equipment. So because that's such a key part of kind of the getting a project going and setting it up, creating them one by one is it's the exact opposite of the whole thing the software's trying to do, is make you more efficient. So I know we have a really great import process. I'm sure any of those products out there have some form of Excel import or spreadsheet import, just because I don't think you would last long in the market if you didn't. So I imagine they all do. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time today.